My name is Rachel Collins, and when my ex-husband invited me to his engagement party, he did not do it out of kindness or closure. He did it because he wanted me to sit in a room full of smiling faces and remember who had won. Before I tell you what happened that night and why his carefully planned victory unraveled without a single raised voice, let me ask you something. Have you ever been invited somewhere not to be welcomed, but to be reminded of a pain someone hoped you never healed from? If that sounds familiar, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Stories like this travel because many people carry quiet endings they never got to finish. Now let me take you back to the beginning, not of the party, but of the marriage that ended long before the paperwork was signed. Michael and I were married for 11 years. We met young, built a life from rented apartments and late dinners, promised each other things that felt permanent because we wanted them to be. I supported his career through long hours and lean years, put my own ambitions on pause more times than I can count, and told myself that partnership meant compromise. When the cracks started, they were small and polite. Missed conversations. Unreturned calls. A growing impatience whenever I asked for time. Michael changed quietly, the way people do when they are already leaving but have not admitted it yet. By the time he told me he wanted a divorce, I was tired enough to mistake honesty for cruelty. He said we had grown apart. He said I deserved someone better. He said it with relief, like a confession he had been practicing. I did not beg. I did not scream. I signed the papers, moved into a smaller place, and spent months relearning how to sleep without listening for another person's breathing. Healing is not cinematic. It is repetitive and lonely and invisible. You wake up, go to work, come home, and sit with the echo of a life that used to be shared. Over time, I rebuilt myself quietly. I found a job that excited me again. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I learned how to enjoy evenings without explaining myself. I did not rush into another relationship, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to know who I was without being chosen or rejected by anyone else. Michael, on the other hand, moved quickly. There were photos on social media, vacations, smiles that looked practiced. I muted his accounts, not out of bitterness, but because comparison is a thief that does not ask permission. 2 years after the divorce, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. My name was written in familiar handwriting. Inside was an invitation to Michael's engagement party. The card was elegant, minimalist, expensive. At the bottom, in a smaller script, was a handwritten note. It would mean a lot to me if you came, it said. I think it's time we both see how far we've come. I stared at the words for a long time. The phrasing was careful, polite, but I knew Michael well enough to hear what he was not saying. He wanted me there so I could see him happy, successful, engaged to someone new. He wanted me to witness the proof that leaving me had been the right choice. He wanted me to feel like the past. I did not respond immediately. I sat with the invitation on my kitchen table for days, moving it aside for coffee, for mail, for groceries, as if it were a thought I could ignore until it lost its power. Friends advised me not to go. Why put yourself through that? They asked. You don't owe him anything. They were right. I did not owe him my presence. But I also did not owe him my absence. I realized something important then. If I avoided the party out of fear, he would still own a piece of my story. If I went on my terms, calm and unafraid, I would close a chapter he was trying to reopen. I replied yes. The party was held at a rooftop venue downtown, all glass and city lights, the kind of place that makes every moment feel like a performance. When I arrived, the room buzzed with congratulations and laughter. Michael stood near the center, confident, relaxed, playing the role of the man who had moved on perfectly. His fiancée, Lauren Hayes, was beautiful and gracious, her smile warm and unguarded. When Michael saw me, his expression flickered, just for a second, as if he were surprised I had shown up exactly as I was, not diminished, not tentative. Rachel, he said, stepping forward. You came. You invited me, I replied evenly. He laughed, a little too quickly. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should, I said, still calm. But I'm glad I did. He studied my face, perhaps looking for something: regret, jealousy, a crack. He did not find it. Lauren approached then, extending her hand. I'm Lauren, she said kindly. I've heard a lot about you. I smiled. All good things, I hope. She laughed softly. Michael speaks highly of the years you shared. The word shared hung between us, heavier than she realized. They were important years, I said. Michael shifted uncomfortably, sensing a direction he could not control. Can I get you a drink? He asked quickly. I'm fine, I said. Thank you. As the evening unfolded, I noticed the small ways Michael tried to direct attention toward me. Introducing me as his ex-wife. Mentioning how far we had both come. Laughing about the past with an edge that suggested he was narrating his own triumph. I listened politely. I did not correct him. I did not defend myself. Silence can be disarming when someone expects a reaction. At one point, a mutual friend asked if it was strange for me to be there. I smiled. Only if I let it be, I said. The music softened. Michael tapped a glass, drawing the room's attention. He began a toast, thanking friends, family, and Lauren for bringing joy back into his life. His voice was confident, rehearsed. Then, inevitably, he turned toward me. I want to thank Rachel, he said, smiling as the room followed his gaze. Our marriage taught me a lot about what I needed to grow. Without that chapter, I wouldn't be here today. There it was. The carefully framed reminder. I felt dozens of eyes on me, waiting for a reaction. Michael's smile widened slightly, the way it does when someone believes they have the upper hand. I took a slow breath and met his eyes. You re-welcome, I said softly. The room laughed, a ripple of polite amusement. Michael chuckled, relieved, assuming I had accepted his version of the story. But then I continued, my voice steady and kind. I'm grateful too, I said. Our marriage taught me that love should never require me to disappear to keep someone comfortable. The laughter faded. Michael's smile frotze. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse. I simply stated a truth that belonged to me. I learned that staying would have cost me myself, I added. Leaving helped me find her again. The room went quiet in a way that felt respectful, not shocked. Lauren looked at Michael, her brow creasing slightly, as if seeing him from a new angle. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for a response that would restore his control. He found none. I wish you both happiness, I said sincerely, turning to Lauren. Truly. I picked up my coat, nodding to familiar faces, and walked toward the exit. Michael followed me a few steps, his voice low. You didn't have to say that, he said. I turned back, meeting his gaze without anger. I didn't, I replied. I chose to. I stepped into the elevator and let the doors close, the city lights reflecting back at me like a quiet applause. I did not feel victorious. I felt finished. And that was enough. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime, and as they descended, I felt the strange, weightless sensation that comes after saying something you have been rehearsing in your head for years without realizing it. Outside, the night air was cool and steady, the city humming with indifference to whatever quiet dramas unfolded on its rooftops. I walked a block before hailing a cab, not because I needed the distance, but because I wanted to savor the feeling of having left on my own terms. At home, I set my coat down, poured a glass of water, and sat at my kitchen table without turning on the television. There was no adrenaline rush, no urge to replay the moment. Just a calm certainty that I had closed a door Michael had hoped to keep ajar. The next morning, messages trickled in. A mutual friend texted to say it had been brave of me to come. Another said the room felt different after I spoke, quieter, more honest. I thanked them and moved on with my day, because validation was not the point. By afternoon, Michael called. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring again. When I finally answered, his voice was careful, measured. I didn't expect that, he said. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. You invited me to a performance, I replied evenly. You just didn't like that I chose my own line. He sighed. You made it sound like I erased you. You tried to narrate our marriage as a lesson you outgrew, I said. I corrected the footnote. There was a pause. the kind that stretches when someone realizes they have lost control of a story they thought belonged to them. Lauren asked questions, he said quietly. About why you said what you said. I felt a flicker of sympathy, not for him, but for the situation he had created. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her we just grew apart, he said, a familiar refrain. I told her you wanted different things. Did you tell her how often you asked me to be smaller? I asked, my tone still calm. Did you tell her how silence became a requirement? He did not answer. That silence was more revealing than any confession. I'm not trying to hurt you, he said finally. I just wanted closure. Closure doesn't come from staging, I replied. It comes from honesty. I ended the call gently, wishing him well without offering to soothe his discomfort. Over the next few weeks, the ripple effects continued. Lauren reached out, not confrontational, just curious. We met for coffee at her suggestion, a neutral place with sunlight streaming through the windows. She looked nervous, earnest. I hope this isn't awkward, she said. I wanted to hear your perspective, not to compare, but to understand. I appreciated her for that. Understanding doesn't require sides, I said. It requires listening. She nodded, stirring her drink. Michael says you're very composed, she said. That you always were. I smiled faintly. Composure is not the absence of feeling, I said. It's the choice to handle it with care. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been circling between us. Do you think people can change? I considered my answer. Yes, I said. But change isn't something you declare at a party. It's something you practice when no one is applauding. She absorbed that quietly. When we parted, there was no animosity, just a shared understanding that truth has a way of surfacing when you stop pushing it down. Meanwhile, my life continued to fill with ordinary, meaningful things. Work projects that challenged me. Evenings with friends who laughed easily and asked real questions. Long walks that reminded me my body belonged to me again. I noticed a shift in myself too. I spoke more directly. I apologized less for taking up space. I stopped rehearsing explanations for choices I no longer felt the need to defend. Then, unexpectedly, the engagement was postponed. I heard it through the same social channels Michael once used to broadcast his happiness. No announcement, just a quiet change. I did not reach out. I did not speculate. That chapter was not mine to manage. When Michael called again weeks later, his voice was subdued. You were right, he said. About control. About silence. I listened without interrupting. I don't know what happens next, he continued. But I know I can't pretend anymore. Pretending is expensive, I said gently. It costs everyone around you. He asked if we could meet. I declined, kindly. Some conversations belong to the past, I said. Others belong to the future you're building. I'm not the bridge between them. Hanging up, I felt neither triumph nor resentment, just a clean line drawn where confusion used to be. Quiet revenge is not about watching someone fall. It is about stepping out of the shadow they tried to cast and letting the light do the rest. That night, as I set my phone down, I realized something else had shifted too. The invitation had been intended to reopen a wound, to remind me of a so-called failure. Instead, it had revealed how far I had traveled. Not away from him, but toward myself. And that realization carried a momentum of its own, one that would carry me into the final act of this story, not with fireworks, but with a steady, unshakable peace. The weeks after that final call settled into something unexpectedly gentle. Not dramatic. Not triumphant. Just clear. I stopped waiting for the echo of Michael's voice in my thoughts, stopped imagining how he might explain things to others, stopped wondering whether my words at the party had landed the way I intended. They had done their work and moved on, the way truths do when you let them stand on their own. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found a stack of photographs from the early years of our marriage. Trips we took when money was tight but hope was abundant. Smiles that were real at the time, even if they could not last. I did not feel bitterness looking at them. I felt gratitude for the version of myself who loved deeply and learned carefully. I kept a few photos, not as reminders of loss, but as proof that I had once believed wholeheartedly, and that belief had not been a weakness. It had been a chapter. Around that time, a promotion came through at work, the kind I had quietly prepared for without announcing it to anyone. Colleagues congratulated me, and one asked how I stayed so grounded through change. I answered honestly. I stopped measuring my life against someone else's milestones, I said. I started listening to my own. The words surprised me as much as they resonated. On a Saturday morning, I ran into Michael by chance at a bookstore cafe. He looked different. Not worse, not better, just less certain. We exchanged polite greetings. No tension. No nostalgia. He congratulated me on the promotion, having heard through mutual friends. I thanked him. He paused, then said, "I never meant to make you feel like a failure." I looked at him calmly. "Intent doesn't erase impact," I replied. "But awareness can change what comes next." He nodded, absorbing that quietly. When we parted, there was no lingering. No unfinished sentence. That was when I knew the story had truly ended. Later that evening, I hosted a small dinner for friends. Nothing elaborate. Good food, open windows, laughter that filled the room without effort. As we talked about plans and possibilities, I realized how different this felt from the rooftop party weeks before. No performance. No audience. Just presence. Someone asked if I ever regretted going to the engagement party. I considered the question carefully. No, I said. Because it reminded me that my healing doesn't require hiding. It requires honesty. Quiet revenge is often misunderstood. It is not about making someone regret inviting you. It is about refusing to carry a label they tried to pin on you. Michael wanted to remind me of a failure in love. What he revealed instead was that love does not fail when it ends. It fails when it asks you to disappear to survive. If you are listening to this and wondering whether you should show up to a place that once hurt you, ask yourself one thing. Are you going to prove something to them, or are you going to reclaim something for yourself? If it is the latter, go calmly. Speak truthfully. Leave gently. You do not owe anyone a performance of your pain. Thank you for staying with my story until the end. If it resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you believe quiet strength is still strength, and subscribe for more cinematic stories about healing, dignity, and the power of choosing yourself.